Hello, and another warm welcome to you from wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for joining us at the Global Disability Innovation Hub, also known as the GDI Hub. For today's Disability Innovation Lecture, we're delighted to be joined by UCL Honorary Professor Rosie Gowran from the Health Service Executive Ireland and the University of Limerick. Before we start, I'll begin by introducing myself and summarising the format for today's lecture. My name is Nadine and I'm Communications Manager here at the GDI Hub. For a sensory description, I'm a Black woman wearing a navy blue jumper and silver coloured earrings. Online, we're joined by Bo, who'll be providing live captions throughout today's session. You can turn this feature on at the bottom of your screen by selecting closed captions. The format for today's lecture begins with a presentation from Rosie for approximately 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A for the remaining time until we wrap things up at 2 p.m. Rosie will describe any slide visuals and we will provide a copy of these slides after the event. Please feel free to post any questions during the Q&A feature at any time, and we'll do our very best to address as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Professor Rosie Gowran to begin today's lecture. Rosie, over to you.
Thanks very much, Nadine, and thank you to everybody for joining. My name is Rosie Gowran. I'm a white woman and I'm wearing a grey dress today. I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to share your lunchtime with you at this webinar, and really to share a bit about myself and my thoughts in relation to disability innovation, but really about people and meeting people's needs now and in the future, and the fact that this is everybody's responsibility, and it's a really important topic that I'm very passionate about. Just to illuminate on some of the titles that I have, I've recently taken up a post with the Health Service Executive in Ireland as the National Clinical Lead for the programme for people with disabilities, to implement the UNCRPD into health and social care in Ireland. And this is I feel very privileged to be in this position to support the development of sustainable health and social care infrastructure in Ireland. Also, I'm an associate professor in occupational therapy and most recently an honorary professor with the Global Disability Innovation Hub. So it's a very exciting time for me. And sometimes I think, how did this all happen? And today I hope to share with you some of those reflections in relation to where I am today. So this lunchtime, and I thank you for giving up your lunchtime, is a time to reflect on where we come from as human beings, to observe, to recognize where we are now and how we feel about the way we are doing things as innovators. And also to share what inspires us through love, care, consciousness. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. To revolutionize health and social care systems and disability innovations, and to build sustainable infrastructure. And also to think about how we innovate together as a community of citizens and share perspectives, understandings, and a common goal. And this leads us, bringing all these things together, to be able to enhance the lives of all people, of all ages and stages, so that we can all flourish. So to reflect on where we come from as human beings in society. So as I talk today, I would like to think about that for yourselves as listeners, and where you see yourself as a human being in society. And I'm going to share a little bit about myself and my reflections. So this is me, aged 11 years old, and I've looked at the Convention of Human Rights from 1948, and I'd say, I am a human being, born free and equal with dignity and rights. And I think at the age of 11, and when I reflect back, I didn't know at the time, this was when I realized that we are all human beings and we all have the right to be free and equal with dignity and rights. When I was 11 years old, I used to visit a centre for children with disabilities called the Sunshine Home. And I was still in primary school, so I met people with all types of disability, different conditions. And at the time, I was only a child myself, and I found myself feeling scared and frightened because I was meeting people that were so different to me. And one day, this little girl, she was shuffling along the floor and saying to me, "Up, up." And she looked very different to me, and I was frightened. But I picked her up, and her smile just captured my very essence. Also, at that time, I met a young boy who was the same age as me, 11 years old. And I discovered that he was better in maths than English and me. But he was a wheelchair user, and I spoke to him as if he was a baby. And he asked me why I was doing that, and I got embarrassed. And I realized then that he was the same as I was, and I shouldn't have been treating him as if he was a baby. So this was, I suppose, one of the foundational influences in my life when I reflected back of when I was doing my doctoral research, why I was doing that. Also, my grandfather, Joseph William Sharp, who was born in 1903, started an apprenticeship as an artificial limb maker aged 13 in 1916. And you can see in these images, this is a picture of my grandfather, and also a picture of his shop in Graft beside St. Stephen's Green in Dublin. And it was called Smith and Shepherd, and it sold hospital equipment and surgical instruments. But my grandfather was a sculptor. He used to carve limbs out of willow, men's legs, women's legs, hands, feet. And he died when I was 6 years old, but I do remember seeing some of the limbs that he carved. But I grew up with stories from my mother about my grandfather and the care he took in providing people with what they needed in relation to assistive technology at that time. But the shop closed in 1974, and my grandfather, would be, I suppose, delighted and surprised by all the innovations that have happened since he died in 1973. Also, I've become an activist. One of the things, where we think about ourselves as human beings, and we think about our human rights, but also we have a responsibility to support the rights of others and to work together to meet people's needs, so that we have an opportunity to be free, strong, and independent as people. And in this image, you see me, and this is my daughter. She's grown up a bit now. She's now 16, where we are at a conference and advocating for disability rights. So, as you know, I'm an occupational therapist. So occupation is central to what I think about and what I do as an occupational therapist. And one of the things, and you could reflect yourselves in relation to this, as I am a human being. And I'm an occupational being as well. Having the opportunity to enjoy life, do things that I choose and want to do. And this is really important to me and important to the people that I know and all the people that I work with. So just to briefly talk about occupational therapy, for people who may not know what occupational therapy is, or have some understanding. So according to the World Federation of Occupational Therapists, occupational therapy is a client-centered health profession concerned with promoting health and well-being through occupation. And the primary goal of occupational therapy is to enable people to participate in activities of everyday life. So in order to achieve this, we work with people as individuals and communities to engage in occupations that they want and need to do, are expected to do, and by modifying the occupation or the environment to better support occupational engagement. So while occupation, many people relate it to just work, occupation is everything that we do. Occupations are defined as daily living activities that can be named in the lexicon of culture and that fill the stream of time. In this image, this is a picture of my mother. And one of the things in Ireland, we love to have drink tea. And as we know, tea is not just about the drinking of the tea, the making of the tea. It has a whole cultural expression in relation to what we do, in relation to how we socialize and how we communicate. So thinking of that in relation to occupation, about the ordinary and extraordinary things we do every day, and it's central to the way we live our lives, what we are, who we become, and how we achieve our dreams and aspirations. And this happens across the life span and changes as we grow and develop through life. But anything can influence what we do as people, and you know, we even in the face of adversity, there's many challenges that impact on our ability to do what we want to do. So when we think about occupation and reaching our occupational potential, so this is a person's capacity to do what is personally meaningful. And so it doesn't mean that we have to be the president of the world or whatever. It's about what is personally meaningful to us. And that can be anything from being able to get ourselves up, washed and dressed every day, or getting out to work, or just doing something that we enjoy. So given that, it's really important that when we reflect on ourselves as occupational beings, what influences what we do, is to observe who we are now and how those influences make us who we are today, and how we feel about the way we do things as innovators. So to me, disability innovation is all about flourishing. The ability to flourish in our daily lives is influenced by our life experiences, and that's why it's important to reflect on that and how that impacts on what we do and what we think about, our interactions, and also the context in which we live. To achieve a sense of well-being and meaning and positive purpose, even in the face of adversity. So we need to think about that in relation to the innovations that we develop and we try to provide to people. And also thinking about flourishing and having a sense of self and positive purpose cannot be achieved alone, that we need the supports around us. So given that, as innovators, or when we develop perhaps technology, or we're trying to decide on how we deliver our services in relation to health and social care, or how we transfer the technology that we've designed into practice, we need to consider and think about where our position is, what our priorities are, and how we plan what we do. And in this image, you can see, and it really is about how do we view the world and view the work that we do in relation to disability innovation, whatever that might be or whatever that might mean to you. So in this image, this is an image I took. I pulled my car into a local garage and to park it, and I saw this image, which one side it says customer parking, and the other side it says disabled parking. So again, it's thinking about this image and what it means to you, and how this image may describe our thinking, our systems, and our responsibilities in relation to how we innovate or how we view the world. So again, is this a separation? Do we still see people with disabilities or disabled people as the other, or do we see them as the customer, as and see everybody as a person who has a right to park their car in a space, and that spaces should be made accessible to all people? So thinking about that in relation to our thinking, our systems, and our responsibilities, and how we position ourselves, prioritize what we do, and plan our innovations. So this brings me to the thinking around the different models we talk about, and in my new position as clinical lead, we are prioritizing and working with the social model of practice. And we know there's many discussions about this, many viewpoints in relation to the medical model, the social model, the charitable model, and I'm not going to go into that today, because I believe we have to think of the universalism about rights, and that the only eligibility criteria to be beneficiary of human rights is to be human. And it's really important from my perspective that I think, to think about people and access for all people in this world. So the next piece, so we've thought about our reflection, where we come from, our observing what we do, how we look at the world, how we view the world, but also how do we share that perspective together. I think it's really important. And something when I, as a teacher of occupational therapy students and other healthcare professionals, and also when I view the development of services, the development of assistive technologies to enable people to have purpose and meaning in their lives, I think about what's that all about, and what I'm inspired by is the importance of love, care, and consciousness in what we do, and how that influences our interactions with people, and also how we may work to revolutionize health and social care systems and disability innovation so that it's accessible to all people and meets all people's needs. And thinking then about how do we build sustainable infrastructure that meets people's primary needs now and in the future. And when I talk about primary needs, I talk about that in relation to ensuring that people have everything they need so they can actually access the world in a way that they wish to, without having an appropriate wheelchair, for example, or being able to access a wheelchair as a primary need. It's very difficult then to access other elements of the world. So this is one example that I think about in relation to primary needs or primary assistive technology, for example. So I talked about in the last slide a bit about love, care, and consciousness, and I think this is really a really critical element in relation to how we interact and how we connect with each other as people, as citizens. And I really feel it's important that we care about each other as people, share an understanding, to encapsulate the perspectives of each other as citizens, and make our thinking, systems, and responsibilities relevant to the whole of society, to ensure that service innovation are seamless, safe, and accessible to all people. And we need to think about the political discourse, that it needs to be appropriate in relation to accessibility for all people. And we need to take action, you know, and that this is required so that people are not left in the shadows of the system. And then when we think about that in relation to when we start to innovate, so I know that many people perhaps on this call are designing particular technologies, digital assistive technology, for example, or that you're developing services, or you're trying to build sustainable infrastructure within your countries, you're trying to build sustainable services, you're trying to access materials, there's many different aspects that people are trying to do to create accessible environments. So when we think about how we innovate, we need to work together as a community of citizens, share perspectives and understanding, and have clarity of the common goal. Because what I've found in my work throughout the years is that usually there's a common goal. However, our perspectives are different, and sometimes it's challenging to bring those perspectives together to share an understanding and to try and meet that common goal. And it's important that we are able to view all the skills in the room and welcome different perspectives and work together and create a more sustainable sustainable infrastructure in relation to disability innovation and how we provide our overall services. And part of this is around, you know, meeting in the middle ground, moving away from the hierarchy of thinkers at the top and doers at the bottom, and trying to link people at all levels, because everybody has a connection with how we develop and innovate and deliver what we're trying to achieve. And one of the things in an Irish context, we have a cartoon which says, "Give up your old sins." And I have changed this to "Give up your old ego." We need to work together to share our common goal and meet in the middle ground. So whose responsibility is it to work to build sustainable infrastructure to meet people's primary needs now and in the future? It's all of our responsibility. There's a sense of duty, is driven by aims, by knowing what one is trying to accomplish. And we achieve focus of effort through focus of aims. So we're to think about what are we trying to achieve, how are we going to work together, and how can we bring our knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop and connect and build sustainable infrastructure. And in this picture, this is an image of my daughter on the day she was born. And again, I felt a huge responsibility in how I was going to bring her up, but also how I was going to work to ensure that the systems that I was involved in developing could be better and more sustainable to meet her needs and my needs and everyone's needs now and in the future. And with all this, it's an opportunity then to enhance our lives, the lives of all people of all ages and all stages, so they can flourish. So this is just a reflection of me, of my thinking, what has influenced me as I've grown up, what I'm doing now in relation to how I interact, what I believe in relation to meeting people's needs, what I want to do to be able to share my experiences, work with people and share understandings and work as a collective, and also to bring those elements together so that we can innovate and enhance. So to summarize, really the key elements here are reflective consciousness, collective awakening, bringing ourselves together and making visible what we believe and what we do to create sustainability action. So today is an opportunity to take the opportunity to reflect, share experience, ideas and perspectives on your priorities, on your planning within disability innovation and working together in sustainable development. This image here is a drawing in blue of a woman in a wheelchair. And the caption says, "I wish my wheelchair was smaller." I received this image as part of research that I was doing in relation to understanding wheelchair service provision in Ireland. And this image really struck me, and because the wheelchair has so many parts on it, so many, there's a seating system in it, there's a communication aid that the woman is using. There's a bag at the side for the woman to carry her items. There's a joystick, there's a headrest, and so there's many elements that make her chair bigger and more challenging for her to sit in. So it's important that when we think about this image, to think about when we are designing or developing something, are we connecting with the person that is going to use that innovation? Are we connecting to think what will that innovation do for that individual, and also will they be able to use it and feel good about the use of the innovation when they get to use it? So one of the areas that I have looked at in my practice is in relation to looking at wheelchair service provision, and I suppose I do this in relation to, so it's not really so much the wheelchair that I'm interested in. It's really to support people as wheelchair users, to ensure that the assistive products and the provision and processes related to what people receive are appropriate to meet their needs, so that they can actually live their lives and do what they want and need to do in their life. So you can see there's an image here, which I'm going to just, hold on a sec, play the image, hopefully it will move. So this came from my doctoral thesis, but what we see is that every aspect of wheelchair service provision process impacts on an individual's life. It impacts on their human security, their fundamental human rights, and freedoms from fear, want, shame, vulnerability throughout life. So if access to an appropriate product and services in the country of context are challenging, that can impact on a person's human security. Also, we need to provide education for all and training for all people involved, adequate procurement and funding processes, follow-up, maintenance and repair. You can see from this image that there is, this is an image, a drawing of a person with the silhouette of a wheelchair behind them, and inside the image there are elements in relation to the people involved, the structures in relation to the system, education, training, repair and follow-up in that image. And down in the right-hand corner you'll see a quote that the wheelchair is my legs, her legs, as a mother describes for her daughter. My life, the mother describes that anything that happens in relation to the wheelchair has an impact on the mother's life and the family, our life, and our overall freedom. So it's really important that we think about, when we're thinking about disability, about innovations or provision of assistive technology, and in this example, wheelchair provision, what are the implications of poor access, poor education training, poor procurement, for poor follow-up and management and repair and servicing. So from when I consider looking at wheelchair provision as one example, and considering what we've talked about in relation to reflection, observation, sharing, innovation, and enhancement. What I developed as part of my doctoral work was a sustainable community of practice model. And there are 4 key elements. One is to think about the context in which we live, the valued management of the place. So even when you're thinking about even a small innovation, maybe developing a product, thinking about what's the value or who cares about this within the system and the infrastructure and the context in which the development is happening. Then thinking about the vital meaning for the people. This identifies the people involved, generating an opportunity for reflective consciousness. So an opportunity for people to think about what's important in relation to what they do, and also then to share that importance together as people, which enable us then to identify the challenges or bottlenecks within a system or within the a development process that affects the overall flow of the system as a community of practice. What's influencing the developments, or what's impacting on the ability to move something forward, what's affecting the overall pace. So I talk about this as viable maintenance affecting the pace of the system. And then the 4th piece is visible mindfulness for effective policy. And this generates a collective understanding among the community of practice while accepting differences and creating a sustainable strategy to meet a common goal. So again, this is about bringing what we're thinking together as a collective, sharing that understanding so that we can work together to create effective policy, effective guidelines, effective services, as a collective, and that we have ownership of this of what we do and a common goal, so that we can actually see things happen and see things move into action. Because as we know, we have many documents, policies, strategies that look really good on paper, but never necessarily get fully implemented or implemented at all, and sometimes gather dust. So it's really important that we consider these elements in relation to the place, the people involved, the pace of the system, and the policy that exists in relation to that. And just to note that this, this model is a framework to connect people. It's underpinned by theories of occupational therapy, occupational science, sustainability, and systems thinking. And it was emerged through qualitative research, working with people, participatory action, and using a soft systems approach to understand human occupation and relationships while grappling with contextual issues. So there's a huge amount of connectivity with people and places in relation to the consideration of this model. It's important that this model is transferable, not just looking at wheelchair service provision, or it could transfer it into any area of practice, no matter how small or big, when you're trying to develop or think about all the elements that need to be included in disability innovation. So here, and we talk about meeting primary needs. So I use Maslow's hierarchy of needs in relation to thinking about that we need to build foundations so that we can actually meet people's primary needs, so people can actually do what they want to do. And we know that, there's arguments around Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the hierarchy. However, it's the concept in relation to ensuring that we build foundations to support people to live their lives and a life of their choosing. I can just share this with you as well, maybe for a bit of reflection. So we need to understand who cares the value of the place, the context in which we live, what's currently happening, what's important to the people, all the people. It's important to think about all the stakeholders involved, the viable maintenance, the pace, all, you know, what the flow, the overall flow of the system, and the policies that currently exist, and also the ones we want to make visible and create so that we have ownership, so we can meet people's primary needs now and in the future. So this, you might think, why have I put this slide in? This is a photograph of me when I visited Lebanon earlier this year, and I was struck by the service that I went to see. These are some of my colleagues in Lebanon, and they're trying to build sustainable assist technology and wheelchair services. And they're in a center called Sesabel in Lebanon, and one of the things that they work together as interdisciplinary teams to provide services for children. And one of the biggest aspects was the element of working as a collective, working as a family, and that love was at the center of everything that they do in relation to that. They were so centered on the children and on providing appropriate services to meet the children's needs. And I really feel that this is a real central point in relation to where we're at right now as a community of people, as in relation to how we deliver services, how we plan and think about our innovation, that we need to think about our own sense of care, the love that we put into it, the connection that we have with people, and how we share those elements and how we support people to be innovators, to work as a collective, and that we all try to work together on a level playing field. This is really, really critical in relation to all the things that we do, so that we can bring things together and actually actualize innovation that works for people to meet their needs now and in the future. And ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is to enable people to flourish, to achieve a sense of well-being, meaning, and positive purpose. And this is for me, for you, and for all of us. And what we can see in this image, there is one image on the left-hand side of a young child in a wheelchair who's smiling. The one in the image in the center is of, again, one of my daughter, who features very much in my life, and my friend who is a wheelchair user, and also so I'm trying to depict across the life course. So you have a young person, a young adult, and also then this is an image of my parents as older people, this is about all of us as a community of people. So I'm going to finish there, and I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Brilliant presentation as always. I was particularly struck by the image of the garage car park with the two separate signs, one with customer parking and the other with disabled parking, and the othering message that it sends, and also the normalizing of it. We've got lots of questions coming in. I will have a quick read of them, but thank you, Rosie. Let's start with the first question. I shall read it out on my iPad. I shall read it out verbatim for you here. Fantastically interesting, Rosie. What an incredible way to honour the work your grandfather started all those years ago. I'm particularly interested in your experiences around consciousness and meaning for persons with disabilities. Have you come across differences in how gender, race, or other social markers play into how we, as disabled people, build our identities and the ways we conceive of /relate to using assistive products? Bit of a mouthful, but I wondered if you wouldn't mind taking that question for us, please, Rosie.
Yeah, thank you to the person who asked the question, and for your lovely comments. I suppose I will go back. So my experience is, one of the challenges I see is how you see, I see people as people. This is my challenge, and I've had many discussions with my colleagues and friends who are disabled, and and I really, I think the piece is around how we view people, how we view the world, and it's about people having every right to be in this world. And what I suppose the what's coming to mind here is that sometimes we see that services don't when person with a disability or disabled person, for example, wants to access their GP, or they want to do a certain thing, that how they're viewed, they wouldn't necessarily receive the same type of services I would, in relation to how they're viewed for their gender, the fact that they're maybe the person who's sitting in a wheelchair, and they're viewed as maybe somebody who's different, and they wouldn't necessarily get all the health checks that I would get if I was going to the same GP for maybe a similar complaint or a similar need. These are some of the things that I see, and also how, and I hope this is answering your question. I also also how we develop services to meet people's needs, that we don't see services very separate to services for all people. So I think there's a challenge there, and I'm very challenged about how we separate out. And people might not agree with me on this, but in relation to the disabled world, or the difference, because anybody can become disabled in their lifetime. So this is a challenge for me in relation to, I see that we should be developing services to meet everybody's needs, so that it is universal in that respect. So we take a universal model, we move away, we still, particularly in Ireland, we still work off a very charitable model of practice in relation to how we deliver, design and fund our services. And I see that we need to be looking at this in a more universal perspective. I'm not sure if that's answering the question, but it's really about, I really believe it's about all people, and ensuring people have access to what they need, no matter what their gender, race, or disability is. It's about everybody.
Thank you, Rosie. I understand there are a few audio issues on my microphone, so I'll do my best to talk a little bit louder. On to the next question. Thank you for your presentation today. You mentioned that you don't see the models separately, i.e. the medical, social and or the charitable, but rather all together in universalism. Could you please elaborate as to why that is, when in some countries disabled people live in a system where the individual model overrules them and their needs? For example, the medical model rules everything as doctors, experts, computer data knows best, and the individual's harms that the models do to them is ignored. Can you get to these countries to even consider universalism?
Yeah, I accept that comment. I suppose in relation to universalism, I think it's about that when we talk about the social model, or we talk, about moving to more independent living, or, and I'll give an example. For example, people moving from long stay institutions or congregated settings into their own homes in the community, where they may have lived in an institution for many years, and have not experienced life in their own home, or having choice and control over their lives, or being informed about what they do. Or, for example, somebody who has had a stroke, or has had acquired brain injury, whatever it is that has impacted on their lives, and they, you know, become disabled in some way. It's thinking about, we need to understand the impact that something has, either an injury or condition has on a person's life, in order to be able to support them to live their lives as they wish to. So when I talk about this universalism, we need to understand that people may have challenges that need to be supported and addressed, but embedding that within the social model of practice. I don't believe that I don't believe in the charitable model. I think it's again about people being able to access everything that they need and require, and we shouldn't have to be fundraising for primary and fundamental needs for people. I don't think that is so. That's not. I don't need to include that in the universalism piece. Again, obviously within every context and people's view of the world, and how people see things, what they understand, what they've learned, and in relation to their attitudes, judgments, and so on. That in every context, that is going to be something that needs to be explored in relation to how we reflect and observe what we do, and how we connect people in and engage people in discussion around the whole area of human rights and human security for people within their own countries. So I'm hoping that answers or responds to the question, but really it is about thinking about the person and the person's rights to live their lives and to have choice and control within the context in which they live. And obviously there's a lot of in every country how that support and services for people with disabilities have developed is different, and so that needs to be explored at a contextual level, which is really critical in any of this.
Oh, thank you. On to the next one. It's not a question, but it's more an observation, and it's saying that they really appreciate the care you've taken with your presentation and focusing on human rights as the centrality of human flourishing. So that's a lovely comment there. And got a few more here. Again, thanking you for your presentation, and what a lovely way it is to honour the legacy of your grandfather. If I take a question here, I'll read it out for you. Try to read it out loudly so that you can hear. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I'm an amputee wearing an Ironman leg. I come from the Himalayan region of Kashmir, where disability is still considered a taboo. I have come across a situation where my car was towed by the local traffic police, and I had a hard time getting it released. There is no disability parking anywhere in Kashmir, let alone talk of other disability rights. Even the hospitals don't have dedicated disabled parking. I wanted to ask, what would be the right way of advocating for this basic right in my region? Really poignant question there. Over to you, Rosie.
Okay. Thank you. Is it Abdul, for your question, or for your comments and your question? Where do you start? I think it's about thinking about what value is placed in relation. You talk about there's no, the accessibility of parking, and you talk about your prosthetic, the current one you have. There's many elements there in relation to what your comment. So really, it's about thinking about, well, what's currently valued within your country. What are, if any, policies that exist, or any innovations that are happening in relation to developing services or accessibility within your country, like looking at what currently exists. Where is the value placed on supporting people with disabilities, and then trying to to gather people together in discussion around that. So if, for example, parking in the local hospital is one of the areas that you wanted to look at, is thinking about, who do I need to engage in this conversation, in this discussion? How do I share the importance of accessible parking in the hospital area so that I can access my appointment for, to the limb surgery unit, or the prosthetics and orthotics. So in thinking about that, is there a way of doing that, engaging people in that, and looking at it, is anybody within that setting looking at that to organize some change there? But ultimately, it's really about thinking about what currently exists, what are the positives, what are the challenges, and who are the key people that could be engaged in that discussion, and then working together, and how you can bring together your ideas about what are the key elements that need to be addressed to support change, and how you can action that going forward. So you don't want to just provide a guide, but you want to implement something that works well. Nadine, I can't hear you if you're on mute.
Everybody's got to do that at least one meeting, keep themselves on mute. Right, I'll repeat myself. It's a great question here. I'm inspired by the impact you have had. What was your driving force that kept you going in your low moments, or when challenges became tough?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'll go back to my reflection of when I was doing my PhD and coming towards the end, and that's like 13 years ago now when I actually finished it all off. But I had to keep asking myself, why me? Why am I doing all this? And that's where I started to reflect on what influenced my life and what was important to me. And ultimately, the stories that my mother told me about my grandfather, about the man who came into their sitting room, and my mother be hiding behind the couch as my grandfather fitted the man's leg, and how the man brought a bag of pears in payment to my grandfather, also about a man who used to come to visit my grandfather, and he had no bath or place to wash in his own house, and my grandfather used to allow them to use the bath in his house. Now, it was those stories about caring, about love, about supporting people. Those are the things, for me, ultimately, it's about that. It's about the people that are in my world, and that keeps me going, because there are many times when you think, is there a point to continue to keep moving forward? But in fact, there is, because it's about all of us. It's about how we live in the world. And for me, and also bringing people, get like-minded people. So I'm absolutely delighted to be part of the UCL, the Global Disability Innovation Hub family, the community, because that really helps me to know that what I'm trying to impart, or what I'm trying to do, or how I'm trying to work with people, and how I'm trying to develop innovation, develop sustainable infrastructure, stop developing glossy documents, but create documents that are actionable and innovative. So that keeps me going. So I can't do it alone. I'm surrounded by amazing people who believe the same thing as me. And I think that's really important to keep you going.
Oh, thank you, Rosie. We've got 4 minutes before we wrap up, but I would like to take this last question, if I may. So this question begins with, really interesting talk. Thank you. For me personally, it's the first webinar where the speaker has used audio description to describe themselves and the images in their presentation. As a non-sight impaired person, it helped me to understand that this isn't the case for all. However, my question, your talk touches upon opportunity and other matters for those things that can impact a person's ability to flourish. while you were talking about disability, have you seen similarities with those in different socio-economic groups, or LGBT plus or race, etc.? Are there some similar areas that impact all of these groups and disabled groups, although the impacts may be different for different groups?
Okay. So what I would say is, you know, when we think about disabled groups, they could be groups from different races, LGBTQ communities, you know, so it I suppose in the world of it doesn't differentiate in relation to a person's life. So so what I would be saying is that anything that I talk about is related to all people, and how we support all groups of people, and anybody who is impacted by their ability to do what they want to do. That's really the crux of it. It's about all people. I myself don't try and differentiate. I try and understand what the challenges are for different groups, people who identify in different ways, and I suppose I see the person, and I embrace that, and all the elements that and the qualities that come with the individual, the groups, and I try and understand that as best I can. And really important to hear what the challenges are, to address those and integrate them into what we're trying to develop overall. So that, I hope that answers the question, because I don't want to differentiate between groups or groupings. I think we need to see it as all people, and try and address the challenges that different come to different communities, and work with that. I think that's the important piece. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much, Rosie. That concludes our session today. Thank you once again, Rosie, for joining us and for your very insightful presentation. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel very shortly, and we will send you an email to let you know when it's available. We'll also be sharing a copy of the slide presentation within the next few days. Once again, that's it for 2003 in our Disability Innovation Lectures series. We'll be back in 2024, and we do hope you'll join us there then. Thank you so much, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.